On the 29th of June 2026, a Manhattan federal courtroom was packed with supporters. They had traveled from across the country. Some wore matching blue scarves. Some held signs. They were there to support the man they believed had given up everything to fight for democracy in China. The judge looked at them. Then she looked at the man standing before her. "You preyed," she said, "on those seeking to bring democracy to China." Miles Guo, also known as Guo Wengui, Ho Wan Kwok, Brother 7, the principal, and boss, was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. He had raised more than $1 billion from his followers, people who believed they were funding a movement, people who drained their retirement accounts, borrowed from family members, and mortgaged their futures because Miles Guo told them their money would help bring down the Chinese Communist Party. Instead, he spent it on a 50,000 square foot mansion in New Jersey, a $37 million yacht, a $1 million Lamborghini, and gold-plated bathroom fixtures. And he did it all while broadcasting live streams every day, telling his followers how much he loved them. This is the Bust Files. To understand how Miles Guo stole $1 billion from people who trusted him, you have to understand who he was before he came to America. Guo Wengui was born in 1969 in Shandong Province, China, one of 9 children in a poor rural family. He grew up during the Cultural Revolution, when millions of Chinese families were torn apart by political chaos. By the 1990s, he had found his way into China's real estate boom. He built a property empire in Beijing. He cultivated relationships with powerful officials. He became extraordinarily rich. But Guo didn't just build wealth through business. According to Chinese prosecutors, he built it through bribery, corruption, and blackmail. He allegedly installed hidden cameras in locations where government officials would compromise themselves, then use the footage as leverage. By the mid-2010s, Chinese authorities were closing in. Guo was under investigation for rape, bribery, fraud, and money laundering. In 2014, an Interpol red notice was issued for his arrest. He fled to the United States before he could be detained. And in America, he did something remarkable. He took the corruption playbook he had learned in China, repackaged himself as its victim, and used it to build a new empire. When Guo Wengui arrived in the United States, he needed a story. He had one ready. He was a dissident, a whistleblower, a man who had seen the inner workings of the Chinese Communist Party and was risking everything to expose them. He bought a penthouse apartment in the Sherry-Netherland hotel, one of the most prestigious addresses in New York City, overlooking Central Park. He drove luxury cars, he hosted lavish parties, and he began broadcasting. Guo's live streams were extraordinary performances. He would weep, he would rage, he would claim to have secret intelligence about Chinese officials' corruption, affairs, hidden wealth. His followers couldn't verify most of it, but it sounded credible. It was specific, it was emotional. He was telling people what they desperately wanted to hear. For millions of Chinese people living outside China, people who had fled the Communist Party, people whose families had been persecuted, people who dreamed of a democratic China, Miles Guo was a hero. He called his followers his comrades. He referred to himself as their boss and their brother. He built a community so tight-knit that members would question their own family members before they would question him. Psychologists who later studied the movement described it as a textbook cult structure, a charismatic leader, absolute loyalty, information control, and financial exploitation. But in 2017, Miles Guo was just a colorful exile. Nobody had seen what was coming. In 2018, Miles Guo found his most important American ally. Steve Bannon, former chief strategist to Donald Trump, one of the most prominent figures in American right-wing politics, began appearing in Guo's videos. The two men seemed to share a vision, taking down the Chinese Communist Party. In 2020, they co-founded the new Federal State of China, a political movement that declared itself a government in exile, committed to replacing the CCP with a democratic alternative. They held a ceremony on a yacht in New York Harbor. They burned CCP flags. They released promotional videos that looked like movie trailers. The alliance gave Guo something priceless: legitimacy in American political circles. Suddenly, he wasn't just a Chinese exile with a penthouse, he was a partner of Trump's former strategist. He was being taken seriously by American media. His follower count exploded. And then he started asking for money. First, it was donations, then investments, then membership fees, then cryptocurrency. Bannon was arrested in August 2020 on Guo's yacht, on separate charges of defrauding donors to a private border wall project. He later received a presidential pardon from Donald Trump. But by then, the fundraising machine Guo had built was already running at full speed. Here's exactly how Miles Guo turned political loyalty into $1 billion fraud. He didn't run one scheme, he ran 5 simultaneously, each one feeding into the next, each one designed to extract maximum money from the same pool of believers. Scheme 1. GTV Media Group. In 2020, Guo launched a private stock offering for GTV, his media company. He told followers that GTV would be the voice of the Chinese resistance. Owning shares meant supporting the cause. The offering raised $452 million. Guo had not registered the shares with the SEC. The offering was illegal from day one. The SEC later settled charges for over $539 million, but the money was gone. Scheme 2. The Farm Loan Program. Guo told followers they could lend money to networks of his supporters and receive GTV stock plus interest payments. It was a Ponzi structure, new money paying returns to old investors. Scheme 3. G. Clubs. A members-only club with a minimum $10,000 buy-in. Members were promised luxury services, exclusive events, GTV stock. In practice, they received almost nothing. G. Clubs raised over $240 million. Scheme 4. Himalaya Exchange. In 2021, Guo launched a cryptocurrency platform. The tokens H-Coin and H-Dollar were described as blockchain-native cryptocurrencies backed by gold reserves. The gold reserves didn't exist. The tokens were, in prosecutors' words, made-up figures on an internal company spreadsheet. The Himalaya Exchange extracted $262 million from followers who believed they were investing in financial freedom from the CCP. Scheme 5. The Guarantee. Throughout all of this, Guo made a promise directly to followers in his live streams. "If you lose money," he said, "I will personally compensate you." He never did. The people Miles Guo stole from were not naive. They were engineers, doctors, teachers, business owners. They were people who had fled China, who had built new lives in the United States, Canada, Australia, and Europe. They were people who had real reasons to fear the Chinese Communist Party, people whose families had been persecuted, whose relatives had been imprisoned, whose lives had been shaped by what the CCP had done to them. Miles Guo understood their pain better than anyone, because he claimed to share it. He spoke their language literally and figuratively. He knew which historical wounds to open, which fears to amplify, which hopes to exploit. When he cried in his live streams, his followers cried with him. When he said he was suffering for the cause, they believed him. Wei Chen, one of the victims who spoke at his sentencing, told the court, "This fraud destroyed my life and my family." Her family had lost all of their savings. They had fallen into debt. They had trusted Miles Guo with everything, not because they were foolish, but because they had been manipulated by a man who had spent years engineering exactly that level of trust. Prosecutors identified more than 1,000 victims worldwide. The real number is almost certainly higher. Many victims were too ashamed to come forward. While his followers drained their savings, Miles Guo was spending their money with extraordinary enthusiasm. Federal investigators traced victim funds to a 50,000 square foot mansion in Mahwah, New Jersey, one of the largest private residences on the East Coast, to a penthouse at the Sherry-Netherland in Manhattan, to a $1 million Lamborghini, to a custom Bugatti, to 2 multi-million-dollar sports cars for his son, to a $37 million yacht called the Lady May, to $978,000 worth of rugs, to to gold-plated bathroom fixtures. The yacht alone cost more than the average American will earn in 400 years. While Guo lived this way, he continued his daily live streams. He continued weeping for China. He continued asking for money. He continued promising that the movement was winning, that the CCP's days were numbered, that their sacrifices would soon be rewarded. In one broadcast, he promoted the sale of what he described as unvaccinated sperm, a scheme built on anti-vaccine conspiracy theories. His followers bought it. In another, he claimed that a supernatural entity had spoken to him, confirming that the new federal state of China would soon liberate the mainland. His followers believed him. By 2022, cracks were beginning to show. The SEC had been watching Guo since the GTV offering. In February 2021, the commission told Guo's companies to stop the GTV fundraising. Guo temporarily complied, then immediately pivoted to G Clubs and the Himalaya Exchange. Meanwhile, within Guo's own organization, dissent was building. Some followers had begun to notice that the promised returns weren't materializing, that the luxury services from G Clubs never arrived, that the GTV stock they'd been promised was worthless. Guo's response was to attack the doubters. He accused anyone who questioned him of being CCP agents. He mobilized his loyal followers to harass and intimidate dissenters. The judge at his sentencing specifically noted that he called upon supporters to harass and intimidate those who dare to speak out against him. The cult structure that had made the fraud possible was now being used to suppress the investigation of the fraud. In March 2023, the FBI ran out of patience. On the 15th of March 2023, FBI agents arrived at Guo's penthouse at the Sherry-Netherland hotel. Guo was arrested and charged with wire fraud, securities fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. The indictment described a scheme to solicit more than $1 billion through false statements to thousands of followers. Guo's response from jail was to continue his live streams. He claimed the arrest was a CCP plot. He told followers that he was being persecuted for his activism. He asked them to stand strong. Many did. The supporters who packed the courtroom for his sentencing were there because they still believed in him or because they had invested so much, emotionally and financially, that they couldn't allow themselves to stop. His financial advisor, Kin Ming J, known as William J, was separately charged. J has not been arrested. He is currently at large. A co-defendant, Yanping Wang, known as Yvette, received a 10-year sentence in January 2025 for her role in the scheme. The trial lasted 7 weeks. Prosecutors laid out the full architecture of the fraud, the 5 overlapping schemes, the guaranteed promises, the missing gold reserves, the fake blockchain tokens, the millions spent on yachts and mansions while followers lost their savings. They played recordings of Guo's live streams. His own words, broadcast to hundreds of thousands of followers, were entered into evidence as proof of fraud. Guo's defense argued that he was a genuine political dissident, that his fundraising was legitimate, and that any financial irregularities were the result of mismanagement rather than intentional fraud. The jury was not persuaded. On the 16th of July, 2024, after deliberating, the jury found Guo guilty on 9 of 12 counts, including racketeering, conspiracy, securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. It was one of the largest affinity fraud convictions in American history. On the 29th of June 2026, Judge Annalisa Torres entered the courtroom. Guo had arrived late, claiming illness. He had reportedly vomited on the way from jail, been taken to a hospital, and then brought to court. His defense attorney said he was in poor health. The prosecution suggested he was performing. Before sentencing, Guo spoke. He said he had come to the United States to destroy the CCP. He disputed that his victims had suffered. He took no responsibility. The judge had received letters from victims. She read excerpts in court, people describing losing their life savings, falling into debt, having family members turn against them for their investment choices. People who had believed in Miles Guo with everything they had and had been left with nothing. Judge Torres sentenced him to 30 years in federal prison. She also ordered him to forfeit $889 million. The US government has already recovered $630 million money that is being returned to victims through a remission process. The Sherry-Netherland penthouse is being sold. The mansion has been seized. The yacht is gone. William J., the financial advisor, remains at large. Interpol is searching for him. China's foreign ministry noted the sentencing and reiterated that Guo remains wanted under a Chinese Interpol red notice. The man who fled Chinese justice found American justice instead. Miles Guo was not the first person to weaponize a political cause for financial fraud. He won't be the last. Affinity fraud, the exploitation of shared identity, shared community, shared belief, is one of the oldest and most effective forms of theft. It works because the victims trust the fraudster not as a stranger, but as one of their own. For Guo's victims, the shared identity was something profound and painful. The experience of living under the shadow of an authoritarian government and the hope that someone was finally fighting back. That hope was real. The suffering that produced it was real. Miles Guo simply found it and exploited it. The warning signs were visible. The promised returns were impossible. The investment vehicles were unregistered. The gold reserves backing the cryptocurrency didn't exist. Anyone who looked closely at the numbers could see they didn't work. But when you believe in someone deeply enough, when they have woven themselves into your identity, your community, your cause, the numbers stop mattering. The story matters. And Miles Guo told a very, very good story. The money always leaves a trail. This time, it led to a New Jersey mansion, a $37 million yacht, and 30 years in a federal prison. Follow the bust files, because the next Miles Guo is already broadcasting. Subscribe, because financial fraud doesn't only happen on Wall Street. Sometimes it wears a blue scarf and cries for democracy. The next Miles Guo is already broadcasting, right now, to someone who believes in him completely. The bust files. Every week, a new case file. The money always leaves a trail. We just follow it.